we need more detail in our play. We got to put them in better position to make plays, and then they got to make more plays. And so, we're all collectively in our circumstance together. We got to continually get better. Those are our intentions. We don't like where we are, but more importantly about not liking where we are, it's about what we do about it as we move forward, and we won't blink.
Hi everybody, I'm Missi Matthews. Welcome to the Extra Point presented by Microsoft Surface. The Steelers fall to the Packers 27-17 at Lambeau Field on Sunday. We're going to break down the game and see where the Steelers move from here. So let's introduce our panelists today. We have Mike Prisuta from the DVE Morning Show joining us, happy as can be, and former Steelers. We have two of them, Merril, Hoge, and we also have Arthur Moats on hand. And Arthur was at Lambeau, so we're going to hopefully get him ready for a nap after this show. But guys, we're going to start with the Steelers offense. And Mike, you heard from Coach Tomlin there at the top of the show about more work in their detail in terms of their play, practices. Where did the Steelers go from there, and what are some of those details that they need to work on?
He didn't elaborate, but I don't think he was just saying that just to say it. I think it's a very valid point. And, prior to the game, one of the things Mike Tomlin talked about was his three-pronged plan and getting guys to understand how to play their positions better. I look at Deontay Johnson, who caught a nice touchdown pass in the first quarter, and on the first play of the fourth quarter, he catches a slant on 3rd and 4, gets spun around by one guy, breaks a tackle. He's approaching the line to gain and then retreats from a couple of on-charging defenders, winds up losing the yardage he gained. Now it's 4th and 4, and then before the Steelers can go for it, he false starts. And to me, those are two details. That has nothing to do with anything other than what Deontay Johnson did at the time. And too many of those little mistakes are adding up, and they really don't have a lot of margin for error right now. They got to clean that stuff up. I could go on, but I'm sure the other guys want to talk as well.
All right, Merril, I do want to get your take as well on what Coach Tomlin said after the game, especially knowing the Steelers were finally able to score some points in the first quarter, the first time in 11 games. What was the biggest detail you felt like they were missing yesterday as an offense?
Well, it's really kind of what they've missed all season long. It's just being consistent, whether you're run blocking or pass blocking. This league, is people talk about, it's about matchups, and there's a lot of validity to that. It is about matchups, and we'll get to that in a second defensively, what the Packers did, because they took advantage of some matchups, quite honestly. But you can't get to your matchups until you have time to get to your matchups. That's why everything starts around the line of scrimmage. Everything is in the trenches. And how well they play on a consistent basis is going to really matter. And if you look at all of the games that they've played at this point, like if you didn't give me anything, if you gave me one statistic at the end of the game aside from turnover, because that's the biggest statistic that you need to tell you what your odds of winning are. But if you throw out how many times you attempt to run the football, and it's around 12 to 16 in that range, I'm going to tell you right now, okay, something's going wrong, and you got no chance to win those games. Part of their running game issue is they just can't get to 30, 35 carries a game, because they're so inconsistent in the trenches. And that's a problem. I mean, that's a real problem, because the biggest and the most important way to win consistently in the National Football League is controlling the tempo. And if you can't do that, it's going to be hard to win consistently. Is there some games you'll win? Absolutely. Occasionally, absolutely. But not consistently. And, that's really what they have been unable to do to this point. I know they're trying to get there, and they showed glimpses of it. The first drive, there was glimpses of it. But then it kind of erodes. Then you have a turnover that shifts the whole game. And then you're playing from behind. And that's hard to do when you're not well equipped and there's not a lot of phases to your team to win offensively and defensively.
Arthur, I want to ask you about the 4th down plays, 0 for 2 in this game, 0 for 4 in the season. What seems to be missing that they are not able to convert there?
Yeah, the frustrating part when you talk about these 4th down attempts is just the ball placement, right? We're talking about plays that are being targeted behind the line of scrimmage when these are gotta have it situations. And to me, when you watch some of the designs of it, you question, okay, is it the concept? You also question, is it the read? Is it something where it's predetermined? But whatever the case is, it's just below the line in terms of how Coach Tomlin would say it. And I think that's been the most frustrating part when you're watching this group, because on paper, they have matchups that they should be able to win, right? We talk about Pat Freiermuth. Every time that he's been targeted, he seems to get open. He seems to be able to come down with the catches consistently as well. But when it's fourth down, we don't see any targets towards him. We talk about, having top flight receivers or guys that can create separation. But when it's fourth down, they really haven't utilized those guys, or at least given them a chance to make a play for, the first down and things like that. So to me, that's the thing that is still reoccurring. And I mean, obviously this is going back to a year from now, but that's something that I would like to see them improve upon, because they're too talented of a group to keep playing behind the line of scrimmage on fourth down attempts.
All right, I want to ask everybody just what was the turning point, in the game? I'm sure there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. Prisuta, we'll start with you.
For me, it was the third quarter. The Packers get the kick up by 7, and they have a long drive, but first and goal at the 5 turns into a field goal. So now it's 20-10. You're still very much in the game. Steelers get a penalty on the ensuing kickoff return. The possession starts at the 8-yard line. You want to talk about details again? Penalty on a kickoff return. They get 1 first down and end up having to punt. The punt goes 20 yards. Packers now have 40 yards to go at the start of their possession for another touchdown, which they cover quickly. And now all of a sudden you're down 17 and you're approaching the end of the third quarter. And to me, that's where it felt like it got out of hand. And I think some of that stuff was self-inflicted, particularly the penalty on the return and the bad punt. You just can't do that stuff when your margin for error is as thin as it is for the Steelers right now.
Merril, what about you?
Well, obviously, I think it was a little earlier. I'm just a big proponent of turnovers and where they happen, when they happen. The game's tied up and the pocket completely collapses and you get a turnover right there. Now it's 14-7 right after that. And when you're already a team that's struggling, those things, are hard to overcome. Even when you're a good team, they're hard to overcome because you're going to have to try to overcome that at some point during the game. And I thought that was actually – I thought one of the biggest turning points. And you could tell early on the Packers were controlling the line of scrimmage. I mean, they could run on the perimeter. They can run. They never gashing the Steelers. I mean, unless Cam Hayward really makes a play, which you can't ask him to do each and every down. They've just been unable to control the line of scrimmage. And when you started to see that, people are running to the perimeter a lot on them now, and they've not been able to answer that. That becomes a problem. That means that offense, really now is control. They're going to dictate what's going on because you're going to have to drop the safety. You're going to have to find help there. And then that makes it so much easier to throw the football, and you have one of the best in the history of the game doing it. So when you allow that to happen, it's a hard defensive battle the entire game once that occurs.
Arthur, what was your turning point?
Yeah, now I think both of those guys in terms of Prisuta and Merril bring up great points and very valid points. But for me, I say it's about midway through the second quarter. I believe the score at the time was 14-7. And this is when they had the miss, right? In terms of Ben and Juju, the shot that could have tied the game up. To me, I feel like if you get that score right there, you make that completion, the energy in that building you could feel was still very much indecisiveness because of the Steelers coming out and getting that score early on. I just thought that if they would have completed that keeps the momentum on their side and ties that game. And I ultimately think that it puts more pressure on Green Bay, but instead, we see how we settled for the field goal, and it was a great field goal, but then we saw how everything else that, played directly behind that. I just thought, to me, man, instead of going into that locker room down 17-7, you could have easily been going on that thing 14-14 or 17-14 at worst. If you make that throw, you make that completion right there.
The blocked field goal that did not go the Steelers' way due to the call. Coach Tomlin talked about that as well, just being a 10-point swing that would have helped them as well. All right.
No question. That was a huge play, but, calls are going to happen, and if they don't go your way, you got to overcome them. It looked to me like 4 guys on that side of the line all moved together. It was Hayden, it was Minka Fitzpatrick, it was TJ Watt, and it was Joe Schobert. So I think they were all zeroed in on the ball. And it was interesting to hear Gene Sterator's comments during the game and then also on Twitter. Unless somebody lined up offside, That's probably one that a call that should have gone the Steelers' way, and that could have had a huge trajectory on the game. But that one to me early enough that you got to find a way around it.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break, but despite the outcome yesterday in Green Bay, Ben Roethlisberger broke some NFL records. 2 of them yesterday. He moved past Dan Marino for 6th on the regular season NFL passing yards list, and he also threw his career touchdown number 400.
Ben in the gun with Snell to his right. Green Bay got into the neutral zone. I don't see a flag. It does. Ben's going to throw it down the right sideline. That pass is caught. Touchdown. Deontay Johnson pulls it in over top of Alexander, and that's number 400 for Big Ben.
You gotta love it. You get that one-on-one coverage, and Deontay just heading down the sidelines, hit the torch, and beat Jerry Alexander one-on-one coverage. What a beautiful throw.
Well, and he becomes one of a very limited number of 8 quarterbacks to achieve 400 touchdown passes.
Everybody, welcome back to the Extra Point presented by Microsoft Surface. We talked about the Steelers' offensive woes. Let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball, and Moats, we'll start with you here. Do you feel like the Steelers' plan going in to try to stop Aaron Rodgers and company when you know what they're good at doing was the right plan yesterday?
At times I thought it was, but as a whole, it wasn't consistent enough in terms of winning their one-on-one battles, and not just in coverage. I'm talking about in the pass rush as well. When guys had one-on-one opportunities, they didn't win them consistently enough. And I thought that was ultimately what led to some of the success in terms of Rodgers and that offense being able to keep their drives going. Obviously, the third downs were a little bit too successful in terms of the Green Bay Packers, but to me, a lot of that stemmed from early down issues in terms of first and second down not being as good and ultimately getting Green Bay in some advantageous situations. But as a whole, I just thought that the defense, they didn't win their one-on-ones enough consistently, because that was the bigger difference to me.
Merril, the Steelers knew the connection that Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams had going into this game. What did you see in terms of what they were trying to do to stop that connection?
Well, initially they started out rushing 3 and dropping 8, and trying to flood the underneath zones and doing some stuff like that. And, they kind of had some self-inflicted wounds. They busted some coverages early in the game against some of those third downs that Arthur was mentioning about, that are quite honestly unacceptable. You just can't bust coverages. And then, we oftentimes forget that the guys on the other side are getting paid too, and they're pretty good. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is pretty good. They got, Cobb's pretty good. It's not, they have like 2 or 3 guys that are pretty good as far as getting the ball to. And what they did a good job when the Steelers were in zone coverages, which I think this is kind of a misunderstanding for fans, is that you can still create matchups in zones. Okay, even though you're dropping into a zone, you can still create mismatches. And they did a great job with Cobb on Bush, or they'd get wide receivers on linebackers. They did that quite a bit, and they won those matchups. And then when they got defensive backs on Cobb, they just didn't play well together. They didn't play in sync, so some of it was self-inflicted. Some of it was the Packers did a great job. But when they saw zones, they created matchups that favored them, and they won those matchups. And when you rush 3, it's always dangerous to give Aaron Rodgers too much time, and then when you go man and you try to create pressure and you vacate an alley, he runs, the one touchdown he had. So you kind of forget the other guys are pretty good too. If they clean up the self-inflicted wounds going forward, obviously that's going to help them, the next opponent that they face. And those are the things that they do control. And those are the things that you can be frustrated with, and that you do know that you can clean up. The others, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, anytime you play the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers is going to make some plays on you, period. And so you just can't give him stuff, which they just gave him too many things based on the mistakes they made.
Prisuta, coach was not happy about the third down, especially Randall Cobb early in the first half, said at halftime that needed to change. We saw it more in the second half. What were you seeing on those plays?
I went back and looked at all the third downs this morning, and most disappointing to me was I think Green Bay was 3 for 3 running it on third down. I know those are short yardage plays, but that's making it too easy for them, letting them move the chains that way. The rest of the time, it was dime almost every time for the Steelers, and I think they were able to confuse Rodgers once or twice early. They got an early sack out of Devin Bush on a 4-man pressure. But after that, he was getting the ball out quick, and it looked to me like he knew at the line of scrimmage before the snap where he wanted to go with it, and the ball got there. And they did a great job chipping on T.J. Watt. I thought maybe 2 times a lack of pressure was a factor. One was the touchdown to Randall Cobb, the 23-yarder where he got across the field. That took some time to develop, and Rodgers had the time to let it develop. And then the other time where it really stood out to me was letting Cobb get down the seam, and Rodgers dropped it in the bucket right over, whoops, I hit my computer there, right over Cam Sutton and right in front of Minkah Fitzpatrick. To Merril's point, guy's pretty good.
Yeah, and sticking along that point, Arthur, going back to you, as they said, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. He's going to beat you on a few plays, but everybody kind of thought getting T.J. Watt back, Alex Highsmith, that was going to help. What did you see in terms of their play after the game? T.J. Watt said that he felt like he was maybe trying to do too much and just not a good enough execution on his part.
Yeah, I could definitely understand that assessment by TJ. Knowing him personally, he's an ultimate competitor. He's a guy that loves to make plays, but at times he does get a little overzealous, right? And at times that could compromise just the overall framework of the defense. But I thought for both of those guys, in spurts, I thought they had opportunities. But as a whole, you got to remember, they're both getting back into the game in terms of missing opportunities from injuries and now having these opportunities to get back out there. To me, I just think that it's going to take more time for them to get 100% healthy and be able to play the game that we expect them to be able to play. Right now, it's just one of those scenarios where, because of the beginning of the season and some of the injuries they've had to overcome, it just hasn't really given them the chance to play to their best every single play right now. And that, to me, has been one of the bigger differences between week 1 compared to where we are now, where we're seeing, the team struggle at times to generate pressure, which to me, I mean, it's crazy when you think about how talented they are up front.
Arthur, did you see that touchdown run by Rodgers as one of those plays that Watt might have been referencing? Looked like he went inside, kind of left a lane between himself and Arthur Mollett, and Rodgers saw it and took it. Trying to do too much, as he said after the game. You get a little frustrated, you want something to happen, and you start playing outside yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, Mollett is coming on a blitz right there, but part of that for TJ is understanding that, hey, you might have to 2-gap this right here and just knowing how to do that, right? Or just filling Rodgers a little bit. But that's one of those things for TJ. He can do that. I mean, we know who TJ Watt is. For me, I just feel like for him, he just needs to continue to be out there, right? Get back 100% healthy and just be out there playing snaps. He'll be the player that we know he is.
All right, Merril, the Steelers are sitting at 1-3. I think after the week 1 win in Buffalo, nobody thought that would be their record after 4 games. Everybody said after the game they felt like they were going to be able to come in, work today, the rest of the week to fine-tune things. What is that locker room like when you're sitting kind of at a place where you did not expect to be at this point?
Well, this is where it really comes down to integrity and character of all the people in that locker room. And I'm just talking about as soon as the coaches shut the door, that's what matters. Okay, the coaching staff and those players. And it starts with leadership. It'll start with Coach Tomlin, and the tempo that he sets, how he establishes things. And obviously his history has shown he's done that very well. And I would not be surprised if he doesn't challenge and stimulate the thought process and the energy in the right way, because the bottom line, I've been in situations like this. When I think of some of the great coaches I played for, Chuck Noll would be one of them. In moments like this, when your head coach believes in you, but then he orchestrates a plan for you, that can be powerful. And I think that's what it will take. And then, the players have to execute that plan, and I've always believed that if you really want to be successful in life, you got 2 options. You got 2 locker rooms you can get dressed in. Most successful locker room, one thing happens that is critical and pivotal: you self-evaluate. That's the most important thing from every aspect. Once that happens, then you make changes and corrections. You create a plan, you take action. If you have that in unification within that meeting, then you can change things around. And I have no doubt that can be changed around, but that's what it's going to require.
Prisuta, I'm not sure if you heard Joe Hayden today, but he still stood by the statement that he thinks the Steelers defense can be one of the best in the league. What are you seeing in terms of the details they need to work on this week as they head into another home game?
Well, I think the biggest one, to follow up on what Arthur said, Watt and Highsmith played, but they were not up to speed. They weren't at 100%. Even the mistake T.J. Watt made leaving that lane for Aaron Rodgers, I bet a healthy T.J. Watt runs him down from behind and he still doesn't score. Got to go back to that three-headed monster, right? That was all the rage in Buffalo, and that was confounding for Josh Allen, and it was confounding for the Raiders for 2 quarters until Watt went out of the game. So I would start there. They do have to shore some things up in the secondary, but people are going to make some plays on you from time to time, particularly people named Rodgers. I think this still can be an elite defense. I was talking a lot before the game, given the state that the offense is in, and they're still trying to get better, and they're still trying to develop individually and collectively. Go back to what worked in Buffalo. Dominate on defense, play opportunistic on offense, and avoid the catastrophic mistakes, and then try to make a timely, impactful winning play on special teams. And boy, when Minka Fitzpatrick was running down the field with that blocked field goal, looked like, hey, yeah, this might work again. Well, wasn't to be, but it doesn't mean you throw the plan out. I think you can start there and build off of that.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining me here today on the Extra Point presented by Microsoft Surface. Hopefully next time we meet, it will be after a win. So thanks for your time, and thanks to everybody for watching. We'll see you next Monday.
What's up, Steelers Nation? It's TJ Watt. Welcome to the Pittsburgh Steelers official YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on everything going on in the Steel City. Thank you for being the best fans in football. Here we go.